everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. First order of business, please take a minute to check out our community statement in the chat. We ask that you stay respectful of the presenters and the community at large. Stay on mute until the Q&A portion of the evening begins. Thanks again for joining us for tonight's Summer Mobility Show and Tell, Lessons Learned in Mobility Pilots. In this partnership with Michigan Central Station, Ford Motor Company, and Bamboo Detroit, we bring you 3 wonderful mobility startups from across the world. Each will take a few minutes to share their experiences and lessons learned while piloting their mobility technology in urban settings. We then will open it up for about 5 minutes of Q&A from you, the audience, where you may unmute, ask your question live, or go ahead and throw it into the chat, and I will go ahead and share it with our presenters. In total, we have 3 startup presentations, followed by an overview from our friends at the MEDC, who will be sharing their mobility grant, their open mobility grant application. To kick us off tonight, we have Roshni from the Michigan Central team, who's going to share with us the latest updates on the project. Feel free to take it away, Roshni.
Hi, everyone. Allison, it's saying I can't start my video. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. 1 second. Great. Well, thank you all for joining us. My name is Roshni Shokar, and I lead startup and entrepreneur engagement for Ford's Michigan Central team. Michigan Central is a new mobility innovation district that Ford is building in the historic Detroit neighborhood of Corktown. And we're really excited to be bringing together innovators, entrepreneurs, and those working in the mobility space to come and test new cutting edge solutions. Bamboo has been a key partner of ours in this initiative. And we've been hosting several events and starting to build up the mobility community. So in April, we launched this mobility show and tell series, which some of you may have been at. And that session was focused on how to pilot in Michigan. So for today, we thought it would be cool to showcase technologies outside of Michigan and see what our ecosystem could learn from pilots in other cities around the world. These are a few ways that you can stay in touch with Michigan Central after this event. While our spaces are not opening until next year, we would love for you to reach out if you're interested, follow along on social media, and we'll be hosting a handful of other events throughout the year, so you can come participate in those. I've also included my contact information if you're interested in talking more about how you can engage with Michigan Central. And we're looking forward to hearing from some speakers and hopefully staying in touch with you all. Thanks.
Thanks, Roshni. Michigan Central is going to be the coolest place when it opens up here next year.
It will be. We're very excited.
Yeah, as am I, and I'm sure most of our audience members. Now, I would love to welcome our first speaker, Amir, who is the CEO and founder of Seamless Vision, a company building driverless delivery technology.
Thank you very much, and hello, everyone. So my name is Amir Nardimon, and I'm the founder and CEO of Seamless Vision. I'll tell you a little bit about the company. So we started the company roughly 4.5 years ago, mainly focusing on building the robotic guide for the blind. That was what we've been doing for the first 3 years, including 2 prototypes. The first one, which looks like Wally, and the second one, which is called Buddy, named after the first guide dog, which reached the USA with the entire set of sensory systems, including 3D cameras and LiDARs and ultrasonic sensors and a smart handle, which enables you to lead the user in urban areas, both in indoor and in outdoor scenarios and in human dense environment. And while working on those 2 prototypes, and we finished the last one last March, we realized that while it will take us another 3 to 5 years to reach product maturity, our technology, which is actually the software stack, which includes the autonomous navigation and the fleet management, is already mature enough to be deployed in different verticals. It allows us to explore different verticals, including winning the Toyota Startup Awards and participating in their accelerator. and also talks with Sheba Medical Hospital, which is the biggest hospital in Israel and one of the top 10 hospitals in the world. And with them, we decided to embark on a strategic partnership, including 3 different projects, but focusing mainly on the first one, which is the autonomous logistic infrastructure. And the first thing that we are doing is delivering drugs from the pharmacy to the oncology department. So we have both indoor and outdoor navigation, including underground tunnels and integration with the elevator system, and also the ordering system. It's a pilot that started roughly this March and will continue until full deployment somewhere around October, November this year. And then, of course, we want to expand it to other departments. We already have another department that will be starting in a couple of months. So a little bit about the details. So we have one autonomous platform. Wait a minute, just hiding the screen. All right. One autonomous platform able to carry up to 80 kilograms. It's operational time of 8 hours and secured payload, temperature controlled, focusing on one route, 2 different buildings and 3 different floors, including all the scenarios that I talked about just in a little bit before. So a little bit about the things that we learned, and I kind of split it between the different stages. So the initial connection, the exploration, and kind of understanding the environment, because it's a new environment for us and we needed to hear about their needs and pains. But you have to remember that when you do these talks, they have a very limited time and very limited listening span. So you need to bring a well-planned, digested proposal, even as you are exploring and participating in this exploration. So they understand how they can leverage the technologies that you have for things that at first you think they need and later understand if it actually fits them. It's a long conversation, but it's worthwhile. So listen carefully, understand, and bring a very well-planned digesters, because it will not come from them, although they understand their system better than you. Of course, development phase. So you need to understand who is the stakeholder and the champions. And there's a lot of politics in this very large system. So understand that very deeply and build very close personal connection with them on all levels, which means the requirement meetings with all the departments and the department heads, and do regular sync meetings on their schedule, even if it's once a month or bi-weekly or whatever time they give it to you. And without those meetings, and regardless to that meeting, keep them always updated. Keep sending ongoing updates for whatever you're doing. Be very, very transparent, so it keeps the flame. So they keep being engaged with the project and the product, because in some stage of the development phase they don't even see you. So keep it alive. While doing the pilot, of course, collect the data for yourself, but also for your customers, so you can already understand the needs of how many, in our case, how many platforms will be needed, what's the time that it takes you to get from the department and back, and observe things that can bring them value right now already, even with one platform. Of course, do A/B testing, because you don't know everything, and the users, you can get a million opinions for the same questions. Collect feedback from the users and adjust your features and timeline accordingly, so you improve, and always keep in mind that you need to bring real value for your customer. Some general points that we encounter. So don't save any costs on the prototype. Later on down the road, you'll be able to save the cost of the platform. In the beginning, don't save anything. Bring the best hardware parts you need. Bring the best device you can do at the limited time that you have, with the money that you have as well. but don't save on anything because it may cost you a lot of time and money later on. Keep in mind when you're doing those presentations for the different departments and different roles that your pitch or your presentation always needs to be adjusted because those are different people and each of them are looking at the project on their different glasses. And the last one is for any entrepreneur doing this, keep calm, although it's almost impossible. And I keep meditating every morning so I can stand that pressure in pilot mode. So that's it from me, as quickly as I could.
Wonderful, Amir. Thank you. Those are some really great tips and tricks to piloting, especially the note on not skipping on the hardware piece.
Yeah.
Does anyone in our audience have questions for Amir and Seamless Vision? Feel free to take a moment and unmute yourself and ask. Well, I have a question for you. Did you run into any huge difficulties during the pilot? If you did, what would you do differently to avoid some of those?
We always encounter things we're not even prepared for, but and there are many issues from the hardware to the flow. Keep in mind that we are bringing our operation management system, which manages the fleets, is something that is going to be part of the infrastructure of the hospital, because in large scale, in all the departments, it can reach 200 platforms doing different tasks of logistical tasks. And I think for us to understand the different players, because some of them are even outside of the hospital, because those are third-party systems, from the elevator system to the ordering system to that. There's a lot of champions, and you think that the flow is only doing that route, which is kind of our speciality of doing autonomous navigation, but at the end of the day, you're doing an actual workflow management. So you understand how the nurse works and the pharmacist and the doctors, and then it connects to all the other systems. And for us to do that full diagram and understand the full picture of the complexity of the system today, which is without any traceability, trackability, or predictability, was kind of hard, but it's amazing. And I think we did good that we started it early, but it took us time to understand that level of complexity that is needed beyond the technologies that we have, right? With fleet management and getting from one point to another.
Yeah, we had one audience question pop in here. How did you find the right stakeholders to launch the pilot with?
Well, I had an introduction from one of the advisory board members who set the meeting up with the hospital CEO. But from there, like I said, because we brought a plan, because we knew we were talking about logistics or thought about we were talking about logistics, and wanted to bring our guiding system for blind and for general population. But we heard as we continued the conversation that the real need is logistical tasks. And I think there we kind of guided the discussion to understand in which direction are we heading, who is the department chief, who is the other stakeholders, because even for that simple one department logistical delivery, there's 4 stakeholders from each different side, from the nurse to the doctors to the pharmacists to the guys who are doing the logistical tasks today. So it comes all of the exploration process as you focus into what you are actually going to do, and starting with the simplest thing you can do: one route, one department, one platform.
Yeah, that's great. Keep it simple. Are you continuing to work with the original technology that you had envisioned, even though you said it was about 3 to 5 years out?
Yes. Simple, yes. It's the same technology, everything that we're doing. And Sheba has 28 different buildings, 120 departments, serving more than 1 million people every year. it's a small city, and for us, it's a wonderful beta site and a playground to test anything we want on urban areas, including crosswalks and crossing lights and cars and sidewalks, but also indoors and multi-floor and elevators, and it's the whole package. And it still wakes me up every morning. I have a personal story and don't have time for it.
Yeah.
For why I started doing the robotic guide for the blind, but it's still the thing that wakes me up every morning. And I hope that one day, although startup need to focus on one thing,
Correct.
I hope that one day we'll be able to bring Buddy into commercial use as well.
Oh, I can't wait for that day, Amir. Thanks so much for the overview of what you're doing at Seamless Vision over in Tel Aviv. And an extra special thank you, because we know it is extremely late your time. So appreciate your time joining us here in Detroit, Michigan.
You know that for entrepreneurs, it's just the middle of the day.
That's right. That's really true. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to welcome our second speaker. We have one more question for you, Amir, if you want to answer it offline in the chat. Please welcome our second speaker, Eleanor, who is the city's partnership specialist for Soofa, a neighborhood newsfeed that connects the community with screens everyone can see and that everyone can use.
Thank you, Allison. I'm just pulling up this.
No worries.
Presentation here. Can everyone see this okay?
Yeah, we can, if you want to go into presentation mode, we can still see the browser.
Okay, wonderful.
Perfect, there we go.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Allison. Thanks to Bamboo and to Michigan Central for having Soofa here tonight. My name is Eleanor Evans. I am a city partnership specialist at Soofa. And essentially we are a female-founded smart cities startup. So we're based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. As Allison mentioned, our mission is to create communities that are smart, social, and sustainable by connecting neighborhoods with the Soofa sign. So I'm excited to dive a little bit into one of our case studies in mobility partnership with Miami-Dade County down in Florida. But before digging into that too deeply, I'll give you all an overview of our product, the Soofa sign, and its different functionalities. So first, a note about the hardware to the Soofa sign. All of our Soofa signs are completely solar powered. So there's no wires, no emissions required from them to operate at full capacity. This means that we can really deploy quite agilely, especially in conjunction with mobility initiatives. We say that, the Soofa signs really only need 4 square feet of sidewalk space and some sun in order to work. So when we're deploying, in conjunction with bus shelters, train stops, when there's mobility infrastructure, street furniture, this really is a flexible deployment process here. Something else I'll point out here is that the screen itself is actually black and white. That's because the sign is actually made out of, or the screen itself is made out of e-ink technology, which is the same material as what Kindles are made out of. So it's black and white, no glare, no backlighting, and in full compliance with Vision Zero, which makes it great for pedestrian infrastructure and other, transit-related initiatives. So here's the screen layout in a bit more detail. We do divide it up into several different blocks of content. In the upper left-hand block, we have what we call our local update section. That's where our city partners, whether it's a municipality or at the wider level, a county, can post flexible messaging, customized messaging to push out to constituents. So whether that's public health guidelines, changes, to public transportation schedules, community resources, that space is for our city partners to use as they wish. Directly beneath that, we also have an advertising block. We really strive to make the signs as hyper-local as possible. So frequently we partner with local businesses or cultural institutions from the area to push out information about specials or events to the public. And then finally, on the right-hand side, you'll see that we have Twitter and we actually have some transit information. That's what we call our applet section. So we have a couple different choices of applets. They're similar to widgets, which can run on the right-hand side, whether it's a live feed of a city's Twitter account, a polling feature, an events calendar, or transit information. So here, I'll dig into the case study that I mentioned earlier before and highlight some of our key learnings from that. So in 2018, Soofa was awarded, Ford City of Tomorrow Challenge, the opportunity to deploy in Miami-Dade County in partnership with the county and with Ford. And in doing so, we were able to deploy 3 signs across 3 different Metro Mover stations, which is the county's Metro Rail, transit system. All of those signs are running our real-time transit schedule, in addition to that community polling feature and a local updates section for the county and other community stakeholders to post to. So a couple highlights here. We're about halfway through this pilot right now, about 6.5 months in. And so we've noticed a few takeaways. The first is the fact that we were able to get some great product development in at the outset of this pilot. I know I showed an image earlier before, which looked a bit different from this one. This is what we call our transit layout. And this was developed, especially for this pilot. And we've actually been able to replicate this into additional deployments across the country. But what we really wanted to do was emphasize transit information on the sign, provide as many real-time updates to ridership and to commuters as possible. So we were able to double the amount of information that's transit related to be able to display on the screen here, taking up pretty much the bottom, 40–50% of the sign. And then in addition, we also have the opinion feature, which is geared towards community surveys, getting constituent and ridership feedback on both the Soofa sign and any initiatives that are going on in the county at large. A second highlight here is the community feedback that we've been able to receive thus far. This has been pretty critical for us, just both from a product development standpoint and also really getting to the question of what is most impactful to commuters, to citizens, to the public in Miami-Dade County. So the 2 major takeaways actually that were coming out of this community feedback that we received is the importance, number 1, of multilingual communications. We conducted in-person field testing, and actually at every field testing opportunity, over half of respondents spoke Spanish as one of their primary languages. This really reinforced to us the importance of accessibility, making sure this information is able to be read and understood by as many users as possible. I have included a couple screenshots of multilingual content that some of our other city partners have uploaded to the signs, but we've been really able to take this community feedback and really expand upon it, not just to fit that local update section, but also to fit the entire screen layout at large. The second highlight, coming out of that field testing component was the fact that, having real-time transit information is great. But what would be even better is connecting that actually to the wider route or the wider direction that public transportation does offer in the county. So we have our digital side of the sign, the e-ink screen that refreshes every 2 minutes with updated arrival times. But something for phase 2 that we're taking into consideration is using the back side, which is static. It has a full color vinyl sticker on the back of the sign, and using that to either zoom out on the route, show the starting and end points, show the other directions that people can take, which is especially important for people that may not live full-time in the county. Obviously, there's a lot of tourism, so maybe those that are more unfamiliar with the public transportation infrastructure. And then finally, I'll wrap up, just tie this back up into 3 major lessons learned thus far from this pilot. The first is, the ability to have a flexible deployment. Oftentimes when you're going to deploy a solution, nothing ever goes exactly according to plan. Deployment timelines can get elongated for factors totally out of your control, whether it's supply chain disruptions, which has been, a pretty prevalent problem during COVID, to securing the necessary permissions to install on county or city sidewalks. So definitely, planning in advance, that's a learning that we've taken from this, is adding in that buffer zone to our deployment timeline. It actually took us 22 months to get the correct permits to install in the public right of way. So this was definitely a great learning experience for us to anticipate future areas of friction and really try and get ahead of these things as soon as possible. The second is product adaptability. The solution we thought we'd be deploying in Miami wasn't eventually the exact solution that we deployed at the outset of the pilot, and in all likelihood we'll end the pilot with some more tweaks. So really, zoning in on that stakeholder feedback, that community feedback has really been critical for us in learning what changes we can make that are both big and small that can affect user experience here. And then finally, having an open feedback loop. As I mentioned before, this really goes hand in hand with product adaptability. Really, going to the source, to riders, to commuters, to, just everyday citizens or constituents that are walking past the signs, and making it as easy as possible for users to provide feedback. So our polling feature is right there on the sign. All you have to do is scan a QR code. So really meeting people where they already are to get that user feedback and keep the feedback coming has definitely been instrumental to this pilot thus far. So that's it. Those are our 3 major learnings from this pilot. My contact information is here, so would love to hear from anyone over email with future comments or questions. But thanks again to everyone for letting us present today.
Of course. Thank you, Eleanor. I love that. Great lessons, really highlighted clearly. We, as any audience members have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and ask Eleanor directly. We do have one that came in through the chat. Roshni asks, how was your experience working with Varied in different cities? Which cities have been easier to work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do have quite a range of cities at this point that we've partnered with. Our very first early adopters were larger municipalities, the city of Boston and the city of Atlanta, which were great, to start out, and they're still key partners for us. Oftentimes working with larger municipalities, there are more complex ordinances and, essentially the permitting process can get a bit more convoluted at times. So working with smaller municipalities sometimes makes it easier to expedite that installation process. But honestly, we started out with Boston and Atlanta. We've really noticed a network effect coming out of those 2 hotbeds. So in the Boston area, I think we're in about 16 different municipalities now, and we're seeing a similar web effect out of Atlanta. But more exciting in 2021, we're bringing Soofa Science to California and to the West Coast for the first time. So we really have the full range of the United States on our Soofa map, which is super exciting.
That is really exciting. I love that geography, depth and range. That's really cool.
And of course, with Florida.
Yeah. How did you come across the Ford City One Challenge? What is some advice you have for other founders looking for these opportunities to find grant applications and partner with cities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I personally actually wasn't the one to discover this opportunity or apply to it on behalf of Soofa. As I mentioned, this is about 3 years old at this point. So I can't exactly speak to the City of Tomorrow Challenge, but we are super excited to be partnering with Michigan Central and Ford, as well as New Lab, to bring Soofa Science to the city of Detroit for a similar mobility pilot, the Accessible Street Studio. And I was sent that grant application actually from a coworker who was part of a product development workshop that New Lab was facilitating. So I guess in general, participating in as many virtual forums, as many virtual workshops as possible, the networking effect definitely really helps uncover those opportunities. And, thanks to New Lab for thinking of us and actually referring us to this event this evening. So it's a bit of a ripple effect for sure.
Sounds like it. We have an audience question for you. They say, great concept with Soofa. Is the kiosk displaying LED screens, or are you and your team taking advantage of alternative energy like solar and to power the display?
Yes, so it's not an LED screen, it's an e-ink screen, so electronic paper, which runs completely on solar power. So we have the rounded top of the Soofa sign, which you might be able to make out here in this image right there. That's actually our solar panel. We don't have many in terms of installation requirements. We don't have many. We just need concrete to install on and a clear view of the sky. So we can't install directly underneath a tree or a building overhang for that reason. But the sustainability component to the signs is extremely important to us. So we're happy to have an alternative, more renewable source of energy.
That's great. Dan also has a question. Do you envision a capability to stream content to the displays to mobile devices for individuals in the vicinity to your signs?
Yes, that's a great question. That's definitely, a capability that we're continuing to explore. At the moment, we have a feature which we call Superbuzz. And this is where users can actually scan a QR code that's already on the sign. It's close to the header where it says neighborhood newsfeed. And that's where you'll be able to see a mobile version of what's displaying on the sign at a given time. So Superbuzz can be used to view the local updates box, the advertising, applet information, and then it's also an alternative way for users to actually submit answers to the poll question. So right now, the focus is definitely on meeting people, in the pedestrian experience on the sidewalk. But for bringing that mobile capability, that's definitely where Superbuzz comes into play.
That's awesome. Let me just check our chat here real quick. I guess kind of like final question. I know you aren't the founder of Soofa, but do you know a little bit about the founding story, why they started this technology and kind of like where the origin came from?
Yes, absolutely. So you're correct. I'm not the founder of Soofa. Our two founders are actually pictured here, Sandra Richter and Jutta Friedrichs. They actually founded Soofa out of the MIT Media Lab. And interestingly enough, the Soofa sign wasn't even their very first invention. We had a previous product called the Soofa bench, which got a lot of press because we have a photo of President Obama actually sitting on the bench and using it. That was a solar powered charging device to be placed in parks and on the sidewalk for people to be able to charge their phones on the go. But the two of them really wanted to focus on something that was a bit more interactive, had a bit more engagement, an engagement component. And then of course that ability to really work with city governments and county governments and really change the landscape of the urban environment and bring information to people is definitely one of our key components of our mission, is really making equitable access to information, whether it's transit related, public health related, event related, doesn't matter. We want everyone to be able to see that. So that's part of why they shifted their focus towards the sign.
I love that. I guess one more final question on that public health note. Someone asked, do you foresee applications of Soofa in advancing public health outreach, like health literacy, vaccine information?
Definitely, yes. Especially in the past 16 months or so, many of our city partners turned to Soofa to push out, real-time updates. It seemed like things were changing, especially at the outset of COVID, by the day. So being able to really have this external facing, this outdoor facing platform to bring that public health information to people apart from digital channels. Sometimes, you're not getting the full constituency or the full city demographic just through social media or just through your website. So we saw tons of activity of PSAs, vaccine information, especially as the vaccine rollout really accelerated. Even recently, I've still been seeing content uploaded by our city partners about mobile vaccination sites, vans that are going around cities, opportunities to sign up, QR codes to sign up for vaccines. So as COVID continues to stay with us, this is definitely still top of mind for us. And we're definitely committed to helping cities and counties get that information out.
Oh, that's so great. Well, I can't wait to walk around Detroit and come across my first Soofa sign and like take a fangirl picture with it. So thanks so much for presenting your lessons learned in your pilot, and really appreciate you taking the time this evening.
Thank you.
We're going to now welcome our third speaker, Mindy, who is the founder and CEO of Kaizen Health, a Chicago company that is driving innovation in healthcare transportation. Take it away, Mindy.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am working on sharing my screen.
No worries. Take your time.
Can you all see?
We can.
Wonderful. Well, Kaizen Health is, we just celebrated our 5th birthday a little over a month ago, and we largely work in healthcare logistics. Now, that doesn't just mean clinical work, though. It's really anything that leads to folks leading a healthy and happy life. So we work with health systems and Medicaid and Medicare Advantage. We work with clinical trials, senior living, home health. So actually moving the clinicians around. We work with nonprofits. We work with municipalities. And that might seem like a lot of different client segments, but at the end of the day, it's really, they're all the same. Everyone is serving a diverse population and wants, one place to go to serve that population, and has a set of business rules. And so I'm just going to talk to you about a couple of different pieces of work that we've done that I'm very proud of. And we will start with Rides for Baby. There we go. Columbus, Ohio has the highest rate of infant mortality in the entire United States. And when I learned about this, I was very surprised. I would have anticipated that being somewhere in very rural America, where the closest hospital is something like 100 miles away, right? Where there were a bunch of barriers, and not where there's a huge academic hospital and many other health systems around. This devastated the governor of Ohio. He actually learned about it on one of his kids' birthdays. And so he hired one of Google's consulting companies, Sidewalk Labs, to actually dig into the problem. And they found that one of the main contributing factors was actually a lack of transportation to prenatal and postnatal appointments, as well as a lack of access to fresh food. Now, the women that were expecting mothers during this process were all Medicaid beneficiaries. And so inside of their Medicaid plan, they did have a transportation benefit as well. And so the question kind of then became, well, if they have a transportation benefit, why are they not using it? And the reason is, and I'll sum this up very quickly, Medicaid mandated back in 1965 access to healthcare as part of their program, and not a whole lot changed after that. So everything's very antiquated, lots of hoops and red tape, and so we really got to run some very exciting program and really build it from the ground up, and worked with Molina and CareSource, so 2 Medicaid plans, the city of Columbus. We worked with a bunch of community-based organizations. This is a full IRB study ran by Ohio State, which was quite the concession given that I'm a Hawkeye. But they are amazing people to work with. And so we really got to kind of like dream up our own way of doing this. And so what this sort of came out to be is a completely redesigned program. So there were 4 categories that these women could go to. So they could obviously go to their provider, they could go to pharmacies, they could go to food, and then they could go to social services. Each of those categories had different weekly or monthly trip limits, and all pre-approved locations, which was amazing because that meant that if I was an expecting mother, I could be at work, and I could, get picked up at work, dropped off at my provider, and then be taken home. When normally you have to be picked up at home, dropped off at home, 2-hour windows on either side of this, again, like super antiquated. So we designed a program that really fit into a busy young mom, working mom's life. And so it was an amazing experience, like so many incredibly intelligent people around the table to really bring this to fruition. These women had web apps and mobile apps that they could use, and they could also call in, which is the more sort of traditional Medicaid way of going about scheduling trips. And very few did. They would only call maybe if they were maybe they had extra trips that they needed to do because they were high risk pregnancy or something like that, and they had exceeded their trip limit for the week or the month. So there were exceptions to the rules, of course, but this is really wonderful because it was no longer the peanut butter approach that Medicaid oftentimes takes with regards to medical transportation, but very carved out, looking at the actual population that was being served. It was great. We've had amazing, satisfaction reviews so far. We don't quite yet know if we made an impact on the infant mortality rate. You do have to wait until 366 days until after the last baby was born, and the last baby was born in mid-January this year. So mid-January next year, we'll be able to report on that piece. But an amazing project to work on, and who doesn't want to help save babies, right? So so much fun. And the second project that I will talk a little bit about was the work that we did in Grand Rapids with the city. This is also through the Forward Mobility Challenge. So the idea was that we brought together different constituents to be able to have sort of a more encompassing offering for those who were riding the Go bus. And so the idea was to bring together ride share, more traditional transportation companies that did private wheelchair offerings, and then also the Go bus, so that we could really prioritize the Go bus for areas where it made sense and allow them to make, shorter trips and make, more of them to take care of more folks. And then for extending the hours or extending sort of the geography that were served, or, weekends and holidays and things like that, to be able to really be the single source of truth, that somebody could use to navigate around Grand Rapids. Similar to some of the comments earlier, running a pilot, brand new and something innovative and not easy to do during COVID, challenging to say the least. And it definitely, we definitely probably only saw about half the ridership that we had hoped to, just because people weren't roaming around, and we were really focused on the senior population as well. So that was especially a population who tended to stay home during the early days of COVID. But lots of great learnings, and I really do hope that, this is, part of the future of, navigating cities, right? That there are many different options, whether they're subsidized options, full paid options, whatever, everything is brought together so that we can navigate around. And also we learned a lot about making sure that our web and mobile apps were appropriate for folks with limited vision. So that was a big learning that we took away during this project. So again, we learned a ton, and hope to continue our work with the city of Grand Rapids, because they were also amazing to work with. And with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Bindi. I love the two examples in the side by side and how they were very different, but also similar in overall lessons to everyone. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask Bindi directly, or drop them in the chat. I'm going to kick it off with, because this seems like you're very passionate about it, what inspired you to start this business?
Some family problems, honestly. I will shorten the story just in saying, I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. My mom's sister had some problems getting to physical therapy. She had MS, and it wasn't anything to do with her disease. It was just, navigating Medicaid transportation. There was horrible. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and she never had a transportation problem in her whole life until she started treatment, and it just took everything out of her. My dad is an Army veteran and helped other veterans from our area, like get to their appointments, because it was 3 hours away and driving 6 hours every day, or, that one day, plus being poked and prodded for a couple of hours. Plus it's a big Healthy Chicago 2.0 project that we worked on all at the same time. I was like, okay, like healthcare, like logistics are a challenge. And to be honest with you, it's something I'd always taken for granted, but it all came from personal experience.
Wow, that is crazy, and something I think I'm myself guilty of taking for granted, the accessibility and ease I have living in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and being so close to a major hospital with a car. Like how lucky I am. In the automated scheduling bookings and kind of ride improvements, have you seen any data like for increasing the no-shows and happiness with clinicians directly?
Not much we can do about being happy with the clinicians themselves. We can get them there, but what happens inside those clinical walls, we can't really control. But yeah, so our very first 3 clients were here in Chicago, and we were looking to reduce the no-show rate, reduce the time to discharge, and reduce ED utilization for COPD patients inside of an ACO. And I realized I just used a whole lot of acronyms right there. So for those of you who don't live in healthcare every day, ED, emergency department, COPD is a lung disease, and an ACO is an at-risk organization. And so, those 3 clients kind of took up our first 6 months of trying to figure this out. And we were able to make a very good impact across all 3 of those metrics. And that's when we decided that this was a thing and it was something worth actually pursuing. And so, every client has their own ROI or KPIs, and we measure that uniquely with every client. But we've had a lot of luck so far and never lost a client. So
that's huge, right? Especially after 5 years. It's really cool. Did you have any, in your Grand Rapids pilot specifically, did you have any issues bringing together all of those stakeholders? That was quite the list to kind of make things run smoothly.
Yes. So another lesson learned, lean, especially if you're working with government entities, I would say at any level, whether it's healthcare or municipalities or whatever it might be. Some folks don't love playing nice in the sandbox for reasons that are unbeknownst to me. So dispatch platforms, for those of you who might not know what that is, are the technology that tell a driver go left here, go right there. And the dispatch platform that the city worked with for the Go Bus did not want to participate. And for reasons unknown to me, they just really, had a couple of meetings and were not, communicative after that. And so we did have a problem. So we were able to streamline all the other processes. And unfortunately, like that one, remain the same for the folks working at the Go Bus. So it didn't make it worse, but it didn't make it better like it could have. So I would say lesson learned there is, try to use some of the, the folks that you're working with to lean heavily on these constituents in these projects. I don't know that it would have made any difference, to be honest, but, it's worth trying.
Absolutely is. I mean, that's a great lesson. Thank you so much for sharing both of your pilots with us, Mindy. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I mean, it's extremely powerful and important for public health. So I'm excited to kind of see your year findings here come January 2022, especially in Columbus.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again to all of the presenters. So many great lessons learned in mobility to be shared across our industry. In the chat, briefly, we're going to share our community networking sheet. The sheet allows for asynchronous networking and kind of connections. Please fill it out with your name, email, LinkedIn, any help questions you're looking for or areas of expertise you can lend yourself to. Feel free to fill it out, and this will be your guide to reaching out to others here in the event tonight. And this event would not have been made possible without the awesome support and introductions through our friends at the MEDC. Kate Partington from their team is going to take the final few minutes to kind of share some information on how you yourself with your own mobility startup can apply for funds hosted by the state of Michigan to run your own pilot here.
All right, thanks, Allison. And yeah, thanks Bamboo and Michigan Central team for inviting me. My name is Kate Partington. I'm with the Michigan Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, or OFME for short. I'm going to share more about our grant program today, but I thought it'd be helpful to just give some background on our office and kind of how we got here. Okay, so our office was created in February 2020 by Governor Whitmer through executive order. And the goal of creating the office really was just centralize and streamline all the different state agencies that have been working on mobility in the past and just kind of give it one home. So we like to say our vision is a stronger state economy through safer, more equitable, and environmentally conscious transportation for all Michigan residents. And then we have 6 core objectives that we really try to tie every single thing we do to one of these at least. Grow the mobility industry in the state, engage more mobility startups, expand smart infrastructure in the state, accelerate EV adoption, enable our mobility workforce, and bolster our mobility manufacturing core. So what's unique about our office compared to the past mobility work that the state of Michigan has done is we have our programming side, so that's grants, events, things like that. And we also have a policy side. So our policy side really ensures that Michigan's not only attractive on the economic development front, but also from the legislative front as well. So like I said earlier, a lot of different agencies touch mobility. So we have MEDC, which is my employer, focusing on economic development. We have some teammates out of there. We work really closely with EGLE, which is our Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy Department for all things electrification. We have our friends at LEO, Labor and Economic Opportunity for Jobs and Policy. And then, of course, MDOT, Department of Transportation for all things infrastructure. So some more about our services. So of course we have grants, which I will get into in the next couple slides. We also offer connection services. So we want to make it really easy for businesses to get connected to resources or partners in the state, whether that be public or private. So do that through matchmaking services and also events, virtual and hopefully in person pretty soon. And then policy support, like I touched on earlier, that policy arm can provide support on different Michigan related policy initiatives and then federal as well. And then the last thing is industry intelligence. So we can provide viewpoints and comparisons, benchmarking for different economic development opportunities that pertain to mobility and electrification. So backing up a little bit, you may have heard of the Planet M brand. So that was our team formerly, and we ran Planet M mobility grants for about 2 years. So there's a pilot leg and a testing leg to this grant, and we learned a lot of good lessons that we really wanted to incorporate when we relaunched our grant program. So during the Planet M mobility grants, we funded 26 pilot projects and 27 testing grants. So these are just some of the pilots we supported from all over the state of Michigan, varying different technologies, different areas, and addressing different mobility gaps. So we really had to make sure we took our lessons and incorporated them to make our grant program even better. So enter our Michigan Mobility Funding Platform. So we relaunched our grant in April of this year, and it's grants for companies looking to deploy their technology solutions in the state, both at the test sites and the real world environments. So something that's unique about our platform from our past grant program is we want to make sure that everything that we support ties to one of our key areas of focus. So the first being sustainable futures. So that's everything EV adoption and EV charging infrastructure. Our second is equitable futures. So we really want to try to alleviate mobility barriers and increase access to affordable transportation for Michigan residents. And then multimodal transportation. That's just modernizing existing transit systems in Michigan and making sure that they're connected, and Michigan's at the forefront in all those different transportation modes. So some eligibility. So for both our testing environments and real world deployments, like I said, you got to focus on one of those key areas. There has to be matching funds. So the platform can't fund 100% of your project. There has to be either yourself, the applicant, or a different project partner providing some funds, but we don't stipulate a percentage or a certain amount. So we're open to fund any application. We're not putting any parameters on that funding. There just needs to be other funding on the table. And then of course you need to demonstrate how the grant will help your company grow in Michigan. And then additional eligibility for those real world deployments, you must collaborate with a Michigan partner, that can be public or private. And then you must meet a local use case or need in Michigan to really make sure that these real world deployments we're supporting are addressing a mobility gap in the state so that they can be sustained long after the demonstration period. So we have a rolling application, and our first review period closed at the end of June. So we're in the process of reviewing and hopefully making notifications in the next couple of weeks. Our second deadline is the end of September, with notifications going out late October. And then the final one for this year will be end of December, notifications going out in January. We fully intend on continuing in 2022. These are just kind of our first 3 deadlines for this calendar year. So like I said, you can also apply to test at one of our partner test sites. We have M-City at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. We have American Center for Mobility really close by in Ypsilanti, the GM Research Center at Kettering up in Flint, the Michigan Unmanned Aerial Systems Consortium. So that's all things drone testing. We have the Q&R Research Center up at Michigan Tech in the Upper Peninsula. We have the Great Lakes Research Center, which is all things maritime testing. And then we have the Advanced Power Systems Research Center, which is also up in the UP. So all these different test sites specialize in a different type of testing technology, and they're scattered all across the state as well. So our partners on the platform, so obviously our office, and then our friends at MDOT, the Department of Transportation. Next Energy is the fiduciary and project manager for all of our grants. So any awardees will go under contract directly with Next Energy. And then we recently brought in New Lab, which we're very excited about, to help us with pipeline support and then tech scouting to make sure, we're really attracting innovative companies and solutions to apply to the platform. So that is it. I encourage, if you have any questions, to go to our website. There's great FAQs, and there's also a question box that goes directly to my email. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to address them directly. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. We look forward to seeing what great pilots are kind of done here in our home state over the next year or so with this great opportunity. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Hope you liked the presentations. I really did enjoy the topics discussed here. You're in luck if you really liked it, or if you're watching this as a recording and want to catch it next time around. We'll be doing this event again in September. And we also have some really great mobility panels on some fun topics coming your way here in August. So stay tuned for those announcements. Please remember to check out that community networking sheet. I know we just sent it again in the chat. It's a great way to connect afterwards, leave your LinkedIn and all of that fun stuff. And it looks like a few of our presenters are also dropping their information into chats and the community sheet. So make sure to follow up with them if you have continued questions or want to keep the discussion going. Thanks again to our speakers, our presenters, our sponsors, Michigan Central team for putting this all together. And the biggest thank you is to you, our audience members. We look forward to hosting you at our future events later this summer and fall. Have a great evening.